every time I come in the kitchen, you in the kitchen, in the goddamn refrigerator.
I sure am hungry.
Yo, what's good, everybody? Welcome back to the Morning Dinner Podcast. It's your boy, Keeman Chuck, and we host the Morning Dinner Podcast. Based out of Las Vegas, we sit down with creators, entrepreneurs, and hustlers. And today, we have Jen Toller in the house.
Hi.
What's up, Jen?
Hello.
Hello, guys.
How's your Tuesday going?
You know, it's going good. This weather is pretty crazy.
What's up with the weather lately?
I don't know. I'm kind of a fan. I'm not ready for that.
What's crazy is that I remember specifically last year, this time, because EDC always happens in May, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it just switched to May, didn't it?
Well,
or for the past 2 years?
I can't remember, but I remember every time people go to EDC in Las Vegas for the past couple of years, it's always been scorching hot, you know, and now it's like Florida weather.
It's really cold.
It's like Tacoma weather.
Really cold. Just to let people know. What is like 50? Did it hit like 57?
I don't think it got like the high was 65 or something.
It's crazy.
Today. Yeah, windy, drizzling.
And that wraps it up for your weather for the day.
Join us in Las Vegas for our crazy summers.
So Jen, real quick, for people who are tuning in and don't know, can you let people know who you are and what you do out here?
Yeah, my name's Jen Toller. I work on a project called Fergusons Downtown, the co-founder and creative strategist.
Nice.
Yeah,
But you're not originally from Las Vegas, though, right?
I am not. I'm actually born and raised in Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas?
Yeah.
I've only been to Texas about 2 times.
It's a great state.
Never in Houston, though. I've been to Dallas and I've been to El Paso. Huge state.
Yeah, I've never been.
What's up with Texas?
I've only been in the north side of Texas.
On my arm, if you want to do some like
there we go.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's pretty much it's a lot bigger than that.
Actual size.
Yeah.
Well,
to scale.
Didn't you say, Chuck, like you drove through it one time and then like it took you like 2 days to get through it or something?
Yeah, well, it was the most boring ride. North of Texas.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Houston and Austin, all those. Because I know
careful.
that's
I went to Texas Tech, so it's still north.
Oh, really? Uh-oh.
It's a huge state. It's totally fine.
No, it was just it was a lot of cows.
Yeah, there's a lot of those.
I just felt sad. I was like, oh,
yeah,
you're all gonna be eaten.
Oh no! I didn't really think about that growing up, but yeah, that's probably true.
So you had mentioned going to Texas Tech in northern Texas for fashion and design, right? Mm-hmm. What drew you to do fashion and design or go to school for fashion and design?
You know, it's kind of interesting because I didn't really grow up being fashionable or in my mind thinking that. I definitely was just like hanging out, played sports and all that stuff. But I think my mom, she's the youngest of 11, and my aunt.
Damn, 11?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's a lot. She's
Big family.
And the youngest, yes. I have over 50 immediate family members, and they just made all their clothes. So growing up, my aunt would have, and she's our godmother, so we spent a lot of time with her, would have us help like pin patterns and, I don't know, cut it out, and she would make dresses for us or whatever. So I was fascinated by that. I think going to college was really overwhelming, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. And I also really looked up to my older sister, who's really creative. So in some way that just kind of made sense when I went there, because I definitely was looking even at like early childhood education and things like that. And I honestly can't really tell you what triggered and like, no, I want to do fashion design. Mm-hmm. So, but I would say it's like that deep rooted, because I ask myself all the time, like, how did I get to that point?
Yeah.
Because we didn't grow up with a lot. So when we went and got school clothes or whatever, it's kind of sharing between the sisters and like figuring things out. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think something just triggered. I think watching my sister be creative and doing that kind of pattern making with it was like patterns and cutting and helping her put all the pieces together. I was like, that was really interesting. And I like using my hands and putting pieces together. Right. And then obviously learned a lot through that process.
So was this immediately like after high school that you decided to go to school for that, or did you take a break or? No,
I went straight to Texas Tech.
Okay.
Yeah. Honestly, it kind of worked out. I had like a high school boyfriend, almost went to the A&M sub school, and would have probably tried to do like veterinarian or something like that too. And last minute I was like, not a good relationship. Let me try something else. My best friend's going to tech. And I don't know. It's just kind of crazy how your life path takes you in a certain way. And so when I looked at their programs and what they had to offer, it's an engineering school. Like, it is not a fashion design school whatsoever. And it's very conservative. But there's a really cool store there that really helped project kind of like out of the box and something unique and different, and really shaped a lot of my creative growth that I have today.
Nice. We heard about you from Kelly Bennett. She mentioned that you would be a great guest to have on. And when we were emailing back and forth, you had told me, like in the kind of like your little bio, that you here, I got it written down right here. You bought and managed a boutique in college. What was that experience like, and what kind of things did you do there that carried on to what you came to do in Vegas eventually?
Yeah, so there's a few of us that were pretty young and were super empowered by the owners to manage and buy and release new departments of this boutique. And I just think it was really cool. His name was Steven, and he took care of all of us, kind of took us under the wing and really challenged us to think about who's coming in, how are we targeting them, spent a lot of time bringing brand designers or sales reps or people coming in also to educate. So it's interesting today how much everyone talks about, tell the story, like there has to be a story behind it, because that's something early on and that store that they would come like, it tells a story. And if you can give that to the customers and they have something that they can hold on to, and then they can be like, oh yeah, I got this at the store, and it's crazy because these two designers were stuck in a room for like a week to come up with an idea, and they came up with sharks and mermaids, and then that created the line, and that was a brand called Jesus, GSUS. That's actually true. And I was like, holy cow, that's so powerful. And to share that and give something to like hold on to, then it just makes it a conversation piece, and it made it an experience. So I think a lot of that understanding how to kind of tell the product to consumers. I think being a very conservative town, but also a really fun college town, we could play with all of the boundaries of what was like maybe more society approved products, and then those ones that were really pushing the boundaries, and how that could resonate with different people and really be a space for a community within even the store is called Chrome. We would have a lot of guys actually that would come in and they'd be shopping in the men's section, but looking at the women's shoe area. And at first, like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, we can tell you're not really flipping through, and like, are you just trying to look at the girls, like, and trying to figure it out? And finally I was like, hey, like, is there something wrong? Can I help you? And he's like, I'm so sorry, do you mind? Like, he's a cross-dresser. He's like, can you bring me size 12 and all the heels? I'd like try them on. I'm like, oh my God, of course. Get in go in the tent, because that's what they were for the dressing rooms. We'll bring you all the things. And he just felt super comfortable and like really appreciated kind of what we had to offer. And I think that too, be able to create and be in a space with all these unique individuals, and then people felt comfortable coming in and there was no judgment, was another really big thing that I took away from that experience.
It's all about the experience too, right?
Yeah.
When you were doing all that, like you said, it was how you made people feel that kind of made it, created like a brand loyalty kind of thing too. Like I know for some of the clothes that I wear, like I wear a lot of Under Armour, not just because my sister works there and she gets a good little discount, but I don't know, it just feels good. And then like I don't know.
Yeah.
I love when clothes can feel good and like they make you feel good about yourself. And I have no sense of fashion. I don't, like, if you look at me, like, you see what I'm wearing right now? Yeah. I'm just kidding.
Like, you look good.
I have no sense of fashion, but like, that's interesting. Like, but what kind of experience did you learn there when you were doing that kind of carried over to what you're doing in Las Vegas specifically?
Yeah. Well, I'd say two things. One, taking the time to really understand who you're around and what you're building. I think also with that space, really understanding what your purpose and goal was. It was to create this environment that was safe and pushing kind of the boundaries within fashion at that point, but also not selling something that wasn't real. If it didn't look good, it didn't look good, or if it didn't feel right, to share that. And then being at such a young age in that environment too, I learned a lot from an operational standpoint. So there's
operational. You mean like a managerial kind of thing, or?
Yeah, like how to. When I left that boutique, I was like, I will never manage another person in my entire life. Like, it's just because it's also weird. And even in today, how things are ran with even Ferguson's and my career path, it's not like this top-down business model. But even just from inventory control and how you buy and how you look at things. And even in that store, Stephen, the owner, was very much still about the experience. Like, the floors are blue. We had grass on, fixtures. And so I just really creating that space that really felt like something, and really honoring, like, again, that environment. So for me, the biggest things I took away from that was, okay, tell a story. create a real unique experience that you're behind and believe in. Take the time to understand who people are and what they're looking for rather than just rushing them through and making a sale.
Right.
Because that just doesn't get you anywhere. I mean, get you probably somewhere, but not in a real relationship.
Right.
And then just, you know, I would take notes on like, set up a proper inventory system.
Right.
So you're not there for 3 days counting, you know, through everything.
That's crazy because when you talk about all that stuff, like I wouldn't think necessarily that that's the stuff that goes into it. Like I think of fashion and design. I'm like, oh, you're like, have you seen that movie with Versace on Netflix? It's like a Netflix documentary.
I don't know if I've seen that one.
I forgot what it's called. I think it's.
Is it called Versace?
I can't remember. I think it's called Versace.
I think it really is.
I think it's literally called Versace. But there's like a whole like Netflix docudrama series about it, and it kind of like gives you like a little hint of like what goes on in the fashion industry, where it's like they're like making the outfits like for the runway specifically, and it's got the textures and this stuff, like it means this, and this is how it translates to the audience when they I forgot where I was going with that.
Was that?
Well, I mean.
Oh yeah. But okay, so I just remembered. I just remembered. So we're talking about the textures and all that stuff. But you mentioned kind of like the managerial and building a boutique and learning how to manage and run it. Like that's not something that I wouldn't necessarily assume or like kind of connect with the fashion industry. I thought that's something separate. But you learned it when you were setting up that boutique.
Well, I mean, it was definitely set up and the owners did a lot. We were just lucky enough to be in there to play this role and learn
That's
from
so
it,
cool.
right? So I'm so grateful for that because I definitely think it really helped project me into the career path and journey that I've been on. If I didn't have that, I don't even know, where I'd be, and I would have figured it out, but I did that while I was doing the fashion design, right? So then that helped me tremendously in my school because I could actually see how product fit and then what people were attracted to. So when I was learning doing patterns or hand sewing and doing all that, then I could really understand like how that translated. So like sometimes definitely during design school, like, oh, I'm going to draw this. This looks cool. I'm going to make it. And it's like, oh, why would anyone put a seam that goes like this and that? And like, it doesn't fit right. So I had like these test dummies all the time as I was working in the store. And then right before I left, I actually helped design a fashion collegiate wear, Texas football, kind of a big deal.
Right.
So made some really cool like fashion collegiate wear. And so that was really cool to take all of that of like what worked in the store, what did I learn from my design, and marriage those together and then see people in it and wearing it to the football games was pretty epic.
That's super dope.
Yeah. So.
At what point did you decide to move to Vegas though? Because that's a pretty big jump from Texas to Las Vegas.
Yeah, I really love gambling.
He's like, I used to have a problem. So
no, I was young, and honestly, I had to get out of my college town, so I actually moved back to Houston. And when I was at the boutique, we had launched kind of like a mini Sephora-esque part of the store, and there was a hair care line that I really liked. And when I left, they're like, "Oh, hey, we need some help in Houston. Can you be that person?" I was like, sure, cool, whatever. Gave me a job. It was like $20 an hour. I was like, fuck yeah.
Oh, nice.
And I was killing it. I mean, that's still fucking awesome.
Yeah.
So I'd be fine. I'd be happy with that too as well. But anyway, so I was doing that for a while, and it was very lonely. Like I learned to be happy sitting down at lunch by myself or, going some place to place, because I'd go to these stores and they're like, let me tell you about this product. But then you feel like you're that kiosk person, like, oh, let me put this in your hair. And like, get away from me. But it was still cool when you got to connect with people. And I was sitting there and a Zappos commercial came on and I was like, oh, cool. What's this? And I missed what I had being a buyer. And so I went on their website and just applied. They had obviously the Vegas and then Kentucky, which Kentucky's where their warehouse is. And there's an assistant buyer role. Applied. It was 10 years ago. So I was like,
what is that?
Yeah.
What is assistant buyer?
Yeah. What's a buyer?
A buyer. So with the Chrome, essentially we were kind of buyers for the store. So product so I was a fashion footwear buyer for Zappos. And at Chrome, I mostly focused on men's wear. And then I also helped with, the like skincare and stuff like that for a little while. So, so I applied for the assistant buyer just because that's what I did in college. And, I was like, there's no way. It's the internet. there's probably millions of people in there. They're never going to see my application. Zappos has very fun, unique questions like what's your favorite superhero and all this other stuff. And I truly believe it's because I put my nickname in there, which was Huggles. So I don't know if you remember MySpace, but that was my name on MySpace. Because growing up, I just give everyone a hug before I left the room. So people would just call me Huggles. And that gets exhausting, obviously, when you have a family of 50. So
family reunion be like
oh gosh,
I'm not getting out of here anytime soon.
Yeah, my parents like, come on.
I'd forget names.
Yeah, right. That can happen. Like, what's up, cuz?
Oh, hey.
Hey, good to see you.
What up, cuz?
Yeah. But yeah, so I think that really helped. And then I did a Skype interview, and it's really funny because Zappos also had 6pm.com, and I didn't realize that. Like, I went to Zappos and I applied, and apparently I applied for 6pm. So I'm Skype interviewing with them, and they're like, okay, cool. So what is it that you like about 6pm.com? I'm like, what? Like, I was like, so it looks like, oh yeah, it's a liquidation site and and just kind of made it up on the spot because I'm like, oh shit. I was like, I'm so sorry. I legitimately thought I applied for Zappos, but what I can see, and just responded. And luckily they were impressed with my recovery and flew me out, and I did the whole day interview, and it was really cool. And ended up coming out for the fashion footwear team. So I bought footwear for Zappos for about 2.5 years.
No, I'm still pretty ignorant to this. Like, I'm trying to follow you. What's a buyer?
Buyer.
You buy their product?
Yeah. So when you go to a store and you pick out that shirt, someone bought that. So, some of the brands that I bought for Zappos was Nine West. My boss Megan and I were the ones that brought Aldo to wholesale. So for a while they only had their own stores.
So it's like a third party retail, right?
Yeah. So Zappos. Yeah. So like anytime you go to a store, you have, and it's true. Yeah. So there's designers. So let's say I was with, what's your favorite brand? Stussy?
No, definitely not. I just like this shirt.
Yeah.
He's like, it's laundry day.
This is my pajamas.
Yeah.
But damn, I don't know. Keem, yours. Because
I can make up Aldo. I'll just do Aldo.
Yeah, just do Aldo. Clearly,
I was gonna make this interactive.
Mine's so hard.
I could have said Pro Club.
So Aldo. Yeah. So there's a design team, which is what I went to school for, right? So I kind of I learned that in school, and then learned kind of a new part of the business. So there's a design team that does the mood boards, goes and find fabric. They work with factories. They create the collection. They get it made, and then there's somewhere in there that they figure out, okay, this is a collection we're going to present at trade shows or in our showroom. And then buyers are usually like boutiques or retailers. So they're at Zappos, Nordstrom's, any boutique that you might go in and out of. Then they go to these shows or go to their showrooms, and they look at the collection like, sweet, I want to buy this, 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 and this. And this is how many quantities, blah, 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 blah. And then they have like the price to it. And then there's a suggested retail, because it's illegal to tell people what to price it at, but it's definitely a hard suggestion.
Really?
Yeah. So
it's illegal to tell people what they should price it at?
As a brand, you can't say like you have to put it at this retail price. So you always say it's like a suggested retail cost. But obviously if you undercut the market, then they'll be like, hey, like that's not what we kind of agreed on, and then they'll just stop selling you.
I was going to say, at some point they just stop selling
they'll just stop selling you. Yeah.
And how would they know what you're selling it for?
Oh, they know.
They know?
Yeah. I mean,
what if you're like at a swap meet?
Well, that might not be the real brand.
That's a knockoff.
That might be something different.
You telling me that's not a real Versace shirt?
That's not Supreme.
So the buyer would go and pick that. And it's an interesting business for sure. Because if the big box retailers don't buy certain items, but you loved it, then they don't have the quantity to produce that product. So a lot of times that's why. And I think in the last couple years, or in the last 10 years, it's became very bland in the fashion industry, or you're not seeing a lot of risk, because if Nordstrom, for example, which has a big buying power, didn't buy certain SKUs, which is an item, then it wouldn't go to production because it wouldn't hit the minimums.
Oh, wow.
So then you're almost like limited. So there's often times that you'll buy this awesome collection in half or some of the items don't get produced. So then you're kind of like held to whatever the bigger people make. And I think that's where that huge movement with makers and creators and Etsy's and handmade has really been able to make their comeback and be able to really be, forward facing, because they should. And it offers something unique. Obviously you're connecting to another human being. So that storyline, and I think it's a beautiful thing because you get something kind of unique and different.
So maybe you could shite. Maybe you maybe
I'll pass.
No, I was trying to mix words. I was trying to say shed some light, and I kind of just mixed them together.
Ooh, word, shite.
Maybe you could shed some light on people like or like companies like Burlington Coat Factory, right? Where they'll have like a price tag that says like, oh, this shirt was originally $129.99, but now it's $8.99.
Yeah.
Like, is that because they just weren't getting bought out, and then like, can anybody price it at that point, or is that point like authorized to price it that low because it didn't sell?
Yeah. So that's definitely, so I did go and move here and worked at the Zappos side. My last 6 months at Zappos, I actually went and worked on the 6 p.m. side, which is their discounted site. So it's a lot of things on there that just a reduced price. So that was super interesting to see that side of buying and how that world works. So at one point, a lot of times there's a few scenarios, right? Either they don't want to conform to whatever big box retailer is telling them. So we're going to produce it. We're going to hit our minimums, whatever, because we believe this will still do well. We'll get it out there and we'll test it. And at that point, it could be Express, so their own brand, right? So they don't need a different buyer, like they can just put it in their stores. And then at the end of the season or close towards the end, they have so much inventory. So like, okay, we're just going to cut this down in half or 75%. And at that point, they're still probably fine because they have to make it. And then if you sell it at one point, then they mark it up again. So that you have a lot of room if you're at the actual brand level. So if you go to Aldo and they're 80% off, there's either they're breaking even and or they still have a little bit of margin in there.
See, I always thought when you saw something especially like at a name brand store, if you saw something for like 25% off, you're like, yeah, but they're still making 50% profit on top of that. Cause like you would never, cause sometimes you'll see like 80% off. But they're still making money because otherwise they wouldn't be selling that, right?
It just depends. Sometimes that inventory is just dead. Get rid of it.
Really?
Get some money in so you can use that.
Break even, basically.
But break even or just get money in so you can just reinvest it, hopefully in something that will just make up the loss, right? And there's calculated costs, obviously, for overhead, the employees and taxes and all that other stuff that, when you look at a garment, what it's made for, call it $5, then you have to put that overhead on it too and make up the difference. But 100%, if it's at a brand level and it's 25, 50%, they're still making theirs, because a lot of times if they were to go to wholesale, which would put it in front of a buyer, they put it at a price that the buyer could buy it at. So call it a shirt at the retail's $20. Most likely they're selling it to a buyer for $10. So you would assume that they got it made, for $5.
Plus,
right?
People who are selling things or who buy things wholesale are getting it for such a big discount because they're buying in bulk, right?
Yeah, and then how big your buy is, and you can work out discount. So then the 50% margin can be more or whatever.
So was 6 p.m. basically like Ross? Like how Ross is?
Because I've never been to a 6 p.m.
If you just go to 6pm.com on your interwebs.
Is it only online?
It's only online. Yeah. So, but so some of it was just stock that didn't sell that Zappos would just move over, right?
Okay.
And so the idea was to preserve the Zappos site, so it didn't ever seem like, I'm just gonna wait, it's gonna go on sale, right? So instead they could move it over to a secondary website, so you didn't feel like every time you went to Zappos you could just go to the sell section and just shop on and not,
that's
so
smart.
yeah, it was a smart move. And then in other cases there's a buying team that would just go to the brand and say like, what extra stock do you have in? So at some point in the season, if it's past a point that they feel like they can really sell it at full price, so halfway through the season, they'll start slowly marking it down. And the further and further it gets away, the more the discount gets. So at some level, you're playing roulette at this point because you're like, okay, I'm at the mercy of one, Zappos not selling all the inventory to come to here, which you don't really get to buy, that just gets moved over. And two, I'm at the mercy of that these brands have any inventory and good inventory that I can buy discounted to then put on the site and still make a margin in some case too. So then this whole movement around private label, essentially, which has always been relevant, but then there's SKUs that are made at that are made third tier. There's different tiers. And so it might look like the same shoe, but there's stitching and or maybe some of the materials are just a little bit on the
just kind of like
whoa.
what was that technique that they do on Amazon? Is that what it's called? White labeling?
Yeah, there's white labeling.
So in the fashion world, it's the same thing?
Yeah, so not in this scenario because it's still that it would be Aldo to Aldo. They just might design it a little bit differently, or it wouldn't be the exact same shoe, but it'd be within the collection, just designed differently. So then you could have those kind of markdowns and give that value.
That's crazy.
But yeah, white labeling and private labeling is if we were to build, if we're going to build a brand right now and put our label in it, a lot of times like this is actually Life is Beautiful. This blank, this piece, this jacket exists, and then they put the art and tag on it, right? So they're white labeling something that already exists rather than them like drawing it out, making their own patterns. Like this is the collection I want to make.
Now, what's the process of white labeling? Is that like a committee they have to go to do that, or because I don't know how clothes work? Is there like a trademark on a design, like a certain? I mean, I'm sure not because it's camo, right? You can't really trademark camo.
Yeah, unless there's the fashion industry within like the legal side and what's trademarked and not. It's pretty crazy. I'm gonna butcher this, but Christian Louboutin, I feel like I say all those wrong, ended up trademarking the red sole. So there's a brand called Iron Fist that we used to buy at Zappos, and we had to kill all SKUs on the site and then just eat that inventory because that went through, and they had a red sole as well. Ooh. But now they have the rights to the red sole. So there's certain things that you can do, but there's certain things you can't. Like Life is Beautiful couldn't trademark that name in fashion because it's just a broad, like Life is Beautiful, you know? Like, so there's certain things that you can and can't. And, you know, if you copyright or have like a certain design that's very unique and you can identify it, then sure. But it's a gray area. You take a lot of, I mean, the biggest thing that sucks the most is for these kind of smaller designers. And you see it a lot of times, unfortunately, and the Forever 21s and H&M and all that stuff, they might follow a really cool, like younger designer, and then you'll start seeing that implement.
Oh,
and
so
usually
sad.
it is. And a lot of times it's funny because, or not Texas, but Texas probably. The States is a little bit behind on trend. So the things that are happening overseas are like 2-3 years before it hits over here. And when it hits here, it's still like another 2 or 3 years till it becomes until everyone really picks up a trend. So when it trends like out, it's like interesting because it's already been a thing for like 5 years. But by the time we catch up and stuff to like what we're comfortable with and want to do as an overall, you know, American country, it's still a little behind.
Yeah,
it's kind of interesting.
It's kind of like movies in Mexico, man. Something comes out here and it comes out 2 years later in Mexico. It's not like that, but I do have because I have family down there, and I go visit them all the time when I was a kid with my family, and like they were just like, "Oh, the new movie came out. Like that movie came out 5 years ago."
You're like, "What? Yeah,
it's just coming out over here."
But it's with, you know, social and stuff like that, and people just really owning their own identities. It's really cool, and this huge shift I feel like in the last couple of years has been really awesome to watch.
What are some of your favorite brands right now? If you are, maybe not brands, or I'm trying to figure out how to word this. Is it brands, designers?
You know, honestly, because I've been so disconnected now, being in like my Ferguson's world and more like white labeling or private labeling sector. I've got some cool like blank companies. Like I really like Bella Canvas, which is just like a blank company that you can put your graphics on. A lot of like, you know, if you go
write that down.
Yeah, I mean, you guys put your name on it. USA made, great quality and good pricing. And other than that, just our local makers. I've got, you know, Cricket. I love finding. I mean, her stuff is just curated vintage stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's all I do is dead stock.
Yeah,
not like I just go to thrift stores and I'm just like, oh, it's so cheap.
Yeah. And then we've got Sam with Found Path Goods, who does linen clothing. So just been more integrating kind of our local community of stuff, like Burnt Boutique. They bring some cool stuff in there. So Arma Jewelry is Megan Jupiter Lala, Mojave Moon. So just
nice.
Yeah. So now it's just kind of whatever it's around. And my boyfriend and I live in an Airstream, so don't have a lot of room.
Nice. Yeah. So Zappos brought you to Vegas. But then you got involved with Fergusons Downtown.
Yep. So 10 years ago, moved here for Zappos. Did that.
For those, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
For those who are tuning in and maybe didn't catch Kelly's episode, what is Fergusons Downtown?
Yeah. So Fergusons Downtown is a city block between 10th and 11th Street on Fremont Street. If you've seen two semi trucks inverted, that's where Ferguson's is. And we've been working on it for a little bit over 2 years. Our whole ethos is rooted in community, celebrating and highlighting our local talent. And there's about 30 of us that live in the back in Airstreams and tiny houses. And we moved there about 2 years ago and have been developing the front old motel. And alongside of that, 2 years June is when we launched Mark in the Alley, which was our way of starting to like really tap in, bring people together, create a space to bring local makers, creators to sell. Granted, we have, the First Fridays and the other markets in downtown Summerlin and Henderson, but we wanted to create something kind of further far east and just really worked on the space with creating an environment that kind of transported you from the downtown street into this alley. And we started with 16 makers and creators and maybe like 200 people attending. And 2 years later, we had over 70 this past weekend, and we've had an attendance of almost 4,000 that are coming to like meet the makers, shop, create, like just all the things. It's been really cool to watch that shift for us and see people coming together in that way.
Damn.
Yeah.
When is the next Market in the Alley?
So it just happened this last Sunday. But
did it?
Yes, but it's the third.
Game of Thrones Sunday?
Ooh, yeah. I don't even get me started. That's going to derail us for the rest of the evening.
Oh, man.
I can't.
I don't want to get dislikes on this video.
No, yeah. So usually it's the third Sunday of the month from 12 to 4. We're going into summer hours. So next month it'll be on Saturday. So the third Saturday of the month from 6 to 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
I meant to go to the one last month, but I was out of town. And then I was waiting for the next one, but I guess I missed it.
You said 200 vendors?
No.
Okay.
16.
I was like,
well, when we started, it was
200 people.
Yeah, 200 people.
70?
Sorry. Yeah. This last market, we had over 70 vendors.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, and we've had up to 4,000 people. So this one we had a little less, but I think the wind advisory alerts of like, don't drive, it's dangerous. Maybe scared off a lot of people.
What kind of vendors do you guys have?
They're all local. So anywhere from if it's handmade clothing, curated vintage, culinary, mocktails, jewelry. We have a whole kids section. We have kids that are selling, which is so amazing. These young entrepreneurs, I'm like, get your shit together. You're good. Look at these kids. They're doing it. To all the things. Yeah, it's really cool. We do have a database of over 200 local makers and creators, and it just continues to grow, which is really cool.
That's so cool.
Nice. So you've been rooted into the whole Vegas community. What have you noticed that has changed in the last 10 years since you've been here?
Well, so 10 years ago, again, I was joking about the gambling thing. So like gambling and like the clubs and all that stuff. Yeah, like are just not my jam. And so, I've been really drawn to mom and pop shops or coffee shops and, bars that are local. So I was finding myself coming downtown often when I moved here. And at that time, Zappos was in Henderson. So I lived up there and then we'd all come down here, hang out and then go back. And it just trying to like connect to something. When I moved here, I was 25. Is that right? I don't know, 34, so 24. Yeah. I'm like, let me do that backwards. And, single and just like trying to find the people that I could connect to. Mm-hmm. And so I just would always find myself coming downtown. I spent a lot of time also by myself, which I've learned to like really appreciate this person that I am. But yeah, so doing that, and I would like park my car, run inside, go to the Griffin, hang out, run to my car and go home, or even the Beat and all that stuff. So one of my favorite things in the transformation in the last 10 years is just seeing lines out of these bars or restaurants and waits and, having 200 people on a database and 4,000 people showing up and people coming and buying and wanting to collaborate and sitting around this table and having these conversations that totally exist before, but it's really awesome to see it start coming like more in a cluster and having that space we can call our downtown, like, oh, cool, we can go down there. We feel safe. And, in some cases, obviously you have to be smart. And it's just a place that we can collaborate and really do things together, which I think is really cool.
So it's really like the growth of the community out here.
Mm-hmm. Which it has grown a lot. Las Vegas, because like I'm born and raised here, and I've seen it for a while, and I've just been around like the music scene, because hip hop artists and all that. So I've seen it like grow a lot, because it's pretty like, I remember Fremont used to have like nothing, like literally nothing. I think this is before like Commonwealth and all that. I don't even know if the beat was there back in the day when I went down there one time. It was still like everything was just dead. So it's like really cool to really see like a lot of stuff is changing,
Yeah.
And it's super enjoyable.
Where do you see the future of Ferguson's Downtown and kind of like the culture heading towards?
Yeah, so we actually just had our first tenants move in the last couple weeks. So in the front, so the U-shaped old motel, we actually there's a lot of history there. It was built in the 40s. It was originally called the Franklin's Motel. And then in the 60s is when it was bought and turned into the Fergusons. And both were by families. So the family in the 40s that built it actually lived there. And Theta, she's 90. She's still alive and has popped by to let us know she's happy with what we're doing, which is awesome. And she's told us a lot of stories, how she would collect all the money and walk it down the street and go, pay the bank at 8 years old. And I think that like family vibe and energy still resonates in the space, because a lot of people are like, oh, it just feels so good. And, the way that we're treating it is, I have like, I guess I'm working on the division and the design and with architects and figuring out tenants and stuff, but it's been really cool because that's not just me. Like I've been fortunate and love our community that it's like, okay, what do we need? How can we do this together? You're an expert in this field. I love to think that I could figure that out, but like, help me. I value you. I see you. I appreciate you. Come help. And so it's been really cool, let alone living there with a bunch of people. And as our everyday, being able to really collaborate with the community, and build this space and preserve the bone structures of it. So the building structure is still the same. We were able to preserve 20% of the original tile. So when you look at the Fergusons, the tile all on the top is the original tile, and all the new tile is actually underneath it. And there's actually things that were built on the structure for additional structure or closets or whatever on the like in the U that we actually took out. So there's stairs that actually had this really beautiful curve to it. So we actually took out the bricks to bring back kind of that original movement that it had. And then, so when you look at it from the outside, and saved the sign and did a whole brand guidelines off of what's there. The inside's completely gutted. And the idea, instead of putting it back into the motel state, we wanted to put it more in a gathering community space. So in the front two spaces, we have Dan Cromar, who has Other Mama here in town, and he just opened Hatsumi, which is a Japanese restaurant, which is really amazing. Come eat
Gonna
it.
have to try.
So it's just a bunch of entrepreneurs and creatives down there.
Yeah. So then we got Tiny Bloom that's building out their space right now, and they actually moved here from Portland, found the market, loved it, and quickly jumped in and did workshops, and they sell flowers and just like really integrated and really loved our community. So they're doing a flower shop. Then I've got Corner Bar Management. So they actually own Park and Commonwealth and doing some other bars. They have their headquarters upstairs, a Critical Focus. I'm not sure if you guys know those guys. Yeah. They have their office there. And then I have some leases out with a really awesome coffee shop, roaster that's gonna 98% sure it's there. We're just going back and forth on stuff, but definitely love Public Us and Vesta and talk to those guys and what we're doing. But yeah, it's really cool. So just getting the creatives, the local community, finding those anchors, and then collectively as Fergusons, we've launched Market, we've done Pour, and all these different things to help be a driver. So we're doing, we always want to do our part on driving people to the space, but we also ask for that same commitment from anyone that's coming to be a part of it. Like, we also need you to be a driver. If you're coming here and expecting us to be this success for you, I want that, and we hope that we are. But if you're not showing up to and bringing and trying and testing things, because I equally need that from each and every one. So we're all like kind of champion for each other. And I think that's been a really cool thing for me, at least, to see in this Vegas community, is this collaboration over competitiveness and like really just kind of like, you're awesome, let's do this, let's figure it out. So Kelly, for example, like, that's amazing. She's great, and she's always championing people, and I love working with her. And there's so many other people that are doing that too, where it's like, cool, I see you, you're doing something rad, let's come here, let's collaborate, and then our reach can be greater and make a bigger impact.
That's dope. I always preach like collaboration over competition because I mean, competition you're trying to like outdo each other, but collaboration is like you can lift each other up. You know what I mean? And I like that. Like that's one of the biggest reasons why I like hanging around Chuck so much, is because we're always like, if I see him do some cool stuff, it makes me want to do some cool stuff. You know what I mean? Like
it's like friendly competition. Yeah, that's the word.
For sure.
I win all the time.
You're going down.
That's dope. So the grand opening is this fall, right?
I'm gonna be really light on that. I'm gonna do some openings.
Okay.
Soft openings.
Like soft openings?
A bunch of, so like Hot Sumi's open now. Lamonha, hopefully in the next month, which is gonna be the coastal Mexican restaurant that he's opening. Then we'll do Tiny Bloom. Then hopefully the coffee shop. I'm talking to a hair salon. Aromatherapy studio / massage, a plant store, and some other things. So I think it'd be just cool to roll out different things and give each individual kind of like their proper, like the spotlight's you. And then at the end of the year, for sure, look at doing this like bigger grand opening.
Nice.
So, but hopefully in the next month or so, the gate will be open, and it's just once the Mexican restaurant gets open, then the 2 front spaces and that's really under construction. So then we can open the gate, come eat, hang out in the grass. Because if you haven't been there, we actually dug it down 8 feet. So there's like this slant that goes down into the U of the building. And then it pitched off at each different levels to create these kind of steps and stairs that gives a little bit of an amphitheater kind of vibe.
Oh, that's so dope.
Yeah. And then the back corner, what is that? Northeast corner is where the stage is. And again, the idea, so definitely for all the music stuff that you guys have, is it to be a local stage or original song stage, where a lot of times I think from what I've heard, it's cool, get this gig, you can throw in maybe 1 or 2 originals, but play the covers, entertain the people, where we want to really switch that conversation. And so when people come to Ferguson's as a whole, if it's to shop local, they're here, they're ready, they're accepting, and they're ready. And then when there's music, they're like, hell yeah, let's go to Ferguson's. We always find cool new music. I even want to work on having the music that's playing being all local in the background and stuff like that too.
That's gonna be so cool.
Yeah. So, and then we built that structure that's for the coffee shop, and it is 3 feet above the original grade. So when it was all flat and people used to park, it was only like 3 feet higher of that grade. But now when you go up there, it's like 12 feet difference, and it's like, you feel like it's just crazy. It's like so high.
Wow, I was about to rap and I completely forgot to talk about Stitch Factory. That's part of your journey.
That is
out here in Vegas.
Yeah.
Like, how am I gonna?
Because we did talk about it before the podcast.
Yeah,
that's what it was. That's what it was. That's what it was.
Yeah.
We always do a little bit of talking before the podcast, and I'm like, I gotta remember. Was that on the podcast? Were we live when we were doing that? So people who are tuning in right now, what is the Stitch Factory? What was your involvement with it?
Yeah, so when I was at Zappos, when I left, I actually moved to Australia for a little under a year to help a startup out there. And right before I left, me and some girls were one of the first pitches to Downtown Project for a boutique. And it was just too early, didn't make sense. We wanted to do it more by the Arts District, and that wasn't really where they were focusing on. And randomly got found on LinkedIn by this woman, and I was like, cool.
LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I know, and I have not updated my profile since I went there, which is, it's fine. But it's crazy. She found me, and I was like, okay. And I never checked it. It was like New Year's Eve, and I was like, well, my life, did I do enough? And I was like going through my emails. I was like, oh, what's this? And so it was really cool that she found me, 27 at the time, and wasn't tied to anything. So was able to live out there and buy for them. And then,
damn, that's so tight.
Yeah.
How was Australia?
So
how'd you like it out there?
Loved culturally living there, and I loved because I was in Bondi Beach and I was right by the coast, and I would wake up early and go hiking and watch whales flip around in the ocean. But I was miserable from the working experience. Probably going from anything from Zappos will always be a hard transition.
Right. We heard Zappos has such a great company culture.
And
for
so
sure.
Good.
Yeah. It really, really is. And then secondary, Americans don't get the best rap. So even though I don't feel like that all-knowing American person, the culture of the company wasn't awesome because they were trying to open like the Zappos of the world. And they did this top-down, like take everyone down, and created this really like nasty environment from management and people there. So everyone just like always scared. And I didn't know that when I came in, and I realized really quickly, like, oh, maybe these people aren't really my friends. It worked out. Like I grew so much as a person. Like my poor mother, I probably called her every other day crying and leaving her a voicemail. Cause like also you're on a different time zone. So like
content.
Yeah, I'm getting off work. Mom, so sad. And then I'd go to sleep, and then she'd probably wake up like, oh my God. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't change it for the world. I learned to be tougher, find out what's important and things like that. And it was a really great, and I do have some good friends that I made out of that experience. But I came back to help my friend Megan open Stitch Factory, and I ran it for her. And it was a fashion creative space, and it was super fucking cool. We had this awesome warehouse space, a bunch of machines and dress forms and tables. And the idea, especially when you're a fashion design major, you go to school, you have access to all these great machines and all this stuff, and then you leave and you're like, cool, I can afford a home machine, and I'm just gonna sit in my kitchen. It's like you know, and it's like, oh, it's like night and day. And then if you go to the, you know, more like the Jukies and stuff, it's like and it's like super fast, it's great quality. And so she created this space that fashion designers could come collaborate or have a design studio space and kind of do all that. Definitely just early in its time. So it just didn't really take off. We actually had a lot more people asking us for design help. So we actually started doing more design development. So we would build collections or patterns there's a kids line that we did, an all leather collection that we had made, and kind of got into the manufacturing side, which was super cool. But I was like, there's a reason why people are experts in there. There's like, it just never would pencil out. And if you made one mistake, it just took you backwards. And but it was really cool. And then we ended up going into more of like the brand development. So we would work all the local businesses to build their brand. So year 2 of Life is Beautiful, we actually did a capsule collection for them to show that you could do more fashion and like brand collaboration stuff, and that where people would actually make it more of a lifestyle brand rather than your souvenir t-shirt that you buy and throw in your closet and maybe wear once every so often. It completely sold out, and everyone was wearing it during the festival. So year 3, we actually did all design, all product development, and did all the retail tents and the festival. And it was just phenomenal to see how many people were wearing the product to the festival, where outside lands like, we have never seen anything like this. Like no one wears the actual festival gear to the festival. And so that was just a really cool, amazing moment to know that we could bridge this gap, and just kind of watched it progress from there. And so that was kind of like it. We actually did a speaker series. So once a month for a week, we would bring anywhere from 30 to 40 people in the fashion industry to do talks or mixers or dinners to meet the local community.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was so tight. It was super. It was really
definitely
awesome.
Ahead of its time.
For sure. There's every week was curated. We did the 3rd week. Then there's Tech Cocktail that focused on tech companies, and then there's Catalyst Creative that did the first and last week. They're on creatives or entrepreneurs and things like that. But it was just cool having that much energy and new energy coming into the city all the time, and then to be able to be in front of our community and talk. And then we would do a bunch of workshops. So we'd have come learn how to make a jacket, or some of our first classes were for guys that would hit us up and like, we want to learn how to make drop crotch pants, or like whatever, like sweet. And so I think our first fashion workshop of teaching how to make a pattern and sew was like all dudes.
See, I would have loved that, because I was like getting into sewing and everything, and I was like, damn, this shit's too hard. You know, I wish I had somebody to really like teach me how to like, I know it's just mostly patience, you know, but just like how to like
that's some cute.
I can't think of the word.
That's some cute date shit right there, man.
What?
Take a girl on a date to go stitch.
That'd be tight.
Yeah.
Instead of like the wine and painting.
Yeah.
I haven't done that yet.
No, I'm just kidding. That sounds dangerous.
But there was a moment that we did stitch and sip and sew, and then the city's like, you can't really do that.
I'd be scared of somebody.
Oops.
Yeah, like cutting their finger with a machine or something.
But if you still want to do that, actually, our buddy Kevin bought all of our machines and stuff and built a fashion company called Taffa. And it's actually, it's at the 2nd level of the old emergency art, or in the emergency art building above the beat. So you can actually take classes still there. And then there's another, I think it's Pincushion or something in the Arts District, where they're doing some cool stuff too.
There needs to be like a website for all this kind of stuff that's happening downtown.
Yeah.
Because like, I would never have known that had you not told me. You know what I mean?
True.
And I feel like there needs to be like a directory that kind of lets, like kind of like we were talking with
Nothing to do LV.
Nothing to do LV, and how they're kind of curating all that. Like, here's what you do on a Tuesday night, on a Wednesday night, Thursday afternoon. Like, that kind of stuff helps people really get out there too. When they don't know what their options are, they're not gonna go out, or they're not gonna bother. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So some kind of.
I love what they're doing.
That's on you, Chuck.
Yeah.
What?
Get on it.
Just get on it.
Want me to do it? All right, I'll do that.
You can add it to your services and things of
But it's
offering.
definitely, kind of like you said, it was definitely ahead of its time. And if history has taught us anything in the last 10 years in Vegas, is that the whole community in Vegas is about to boom. I mean, we got more culture coming to Vegas more than ever now. So I definitely say, it's something that can definitely happen again.
Yeah,
So.
I agree. And it is. There's places that are popping up and doing it. And it's just cool. I mean, obviously you learn a lot, and yeah, the city is it's an interesting one in so many amazing ways to keep challenging us as creatives or businesses, because there's just so much to do. So how do you keep creating, again, that environment and that place and getting in front of people? And there probably is a site that has everything to do it, but how do we find it, right? There's so much content, and that's just true because social media and all that stuff. So, but it's been cool, again, like biggest thing is having these moments that we can sit together, making real relationships. We all want to be seen, we all want to be heard. So it's amazing, things like this exist for people to be able to talk and tell their story. And, like you said, everyone has something to say, and it's all great things to say and to be heard. And, I think that's ultimately from a Ferguson's perspective, like, how do we create this platform, this city block? And, hopefully we can take it over to travelers too, and be an anchor in that area that just can be just fluid, like different thoughts, different ideas, and create different roadmaps of hopefully like templates of success. So if you want to do events, cool. This is what we've learned. This is what worked, what didn't work. This is how you can market it, and for X percentage of like success rate, and we're here to help. And so just really trying to test and figure out all those things. I'm sorry, I like moved a lot. I'm fidgety.
It's a pretty janky build table.
This is a DIY everything. So it's not the best.
One thing that we always say is you never know who's gonna get inspired by what you say. Words are very, very powerful, and you never know, like, something that you might have said during this podcast might have sparked somebody to move halfway across the country. Just that one part was very inspirational to them, and you never really know. So that's kind of
just
another
the fact
reason
of how much we learned just now. You know what I mean about all the things, because that's why I love what you guys do so much, because you're curating a community. Without a community, there's no culture. Yeah, and that's just realistically how it is. Like, if everybody's not down to come together and work together, it'll literally just be another little town.
So shout out to Jen Tyler.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for being on.
All you guys.
It,
we I think we're at the what? We're at the 51 minute mark. Yeah, there we go. All right.
That 60 seconds.
Real quick, last thing. Do you want anything you want people to kind of take away from this episode about you, about them? Advice that you have? Last words.
If you're here, you're local, or feel lost, hit me up, have an idea, let's chat. And thanks for listening to me, and you're all awesome. And if you don't feel that way, change your story and tell yourself that you are. There you go. Boom. Oh. Ooh, wise words. We're going to put all your information down in the description down below for people who are tuning in on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys in the next morning dinner.
Every time I come in the kitchen, you in the kitchen, in the goddamn refrigerator.
I sure am hungry.